My friends, I want to talk to you today about something small, something so small that most people overlook it entirely, something so tiny that it weighs nothing, costs nothing, and takes up no space, yet this small thing has the power to change everything. It can transform defeat into victory. It can turn despair into hope. It can convert failure into success. It can make the difference between a life well lived and a life wasted. That small thing is your attitude. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. Perhaps the biggest difference of all. What I mean by attitude is the way you choose to approach the circumstances of your life. It is the lens through which you view the world. It is the story you tell yourself about what is happening to you. It is the decision you make about what things mean. And make no mistake, it is a decision. It is a choice. Your attitude is one of the few things in life that you have complete control over. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control what other people do or say. You cannot control whether you get sick. You cannot control whether you lose your job. You cannot control most of what happens to you. But you can control how you respond to what happens to you. You can control your attitude. And that control is far more powerful than most people realize. Let me give you an example from my own life. In 1940, Britain faced the greatest crisis in its history. France had fallen. Europe was conquered. Hitler's armies were preparing to invade. Our cities were being bombed night after night. We were alone, outnumbered, outgunned. Any rational analysis of the situation would have concluded that we were finished. Many people believed we should negotiate, make peace, accept German domination. The facts supported that view. The evidence suggested that resistance was futile. But I chose a different attitude. I chose to see the situation not as hopeless, but as an opportunity for glory. I chose to view our isolation not as abandonment, but as freedom to act without compromise. I chose to interpret the German threat not as overwhelming, but as a challenge to be met with courage. Was this attitude based on facts? Not entirely. Was it realistic? Perhaps not. Was it rational? Debatable, but it made all the difference, because attitude is contagious. When I spoke to the nation with confidence, with defiance, with absolute certainty that we would prevail, they adopted that attitude. They made it their own, and that attitude changed everything. Our pilots flew into battle outnumbered 3-1, but they flew with the attitude that they were the best in the world, and they proved it. Our sailors faced U-boats and storms, but they sailed with the attitude that they would get through, and they did. Our citizens endured the Blitz with the attitude that Hitler could break their buildings but not their spirit, and he could not. That attitude, that small thing, made the difference between survival and destruction. It made the difference between slavery and freedom. It made the difference between the world we live in now and a world ruled by tyranny. Now, you might say that national survival is a special case. You might argue that your personal challenges are different, smaller, less dramatic, but I assure you the principle is exactly the same. Your attitude toward your personal challenges will determine your personal outcomes, just as surely as national attitude determines national outcomes. Consider two men who lose their jobs on the same day. The first man adopts the attitude that he is a victim, that the world is unfair, that his life is ruined. What happens to that man? He becomes bitter. He becomes paralyzed. He stops looking for opportunities because he has convinced himself that no opportunities exist. He fulfills his own prophecy. He does indeed struggle to find work because his attitude makes him unemployable. Who wants to hire someone who radiates bitterness and defeat? The second man loses the same job on the same day, but he adopts a different attitude. He sees the job loss as a chance for a fresh start. He views it as freedom to pursue something he always wanted to do. He treats it as a challenge to prove his resilience. What happens to that man? He takes action, he explores options, he talks to people, and very often he ends up in a better situation than before. Not because he was luckier than the first man, not because he was more talented, but because his attitude opened doors that the first man's attitude closed. Same situation, same facts, different attitude, different outcome. That is the power of attitude. Let me tell you about a soldier I met during the war. He had lost both his legs in combat, both legs gone. When I visited him in hospital, I expected to find a broken man, drowning in self-pity. Instead, I found him joking with the nurses, encouraging other patients, making plans for what he would do when he got out. I asked him how he maintained such a positive attitude given what had happened to him. He said something I have never forgotten. He said, "I lost my legs, but I did not lose myself. I can choose to be miserable, or I can choose to make the best of this. Either way, my legs are still gone, so I might as well choose to make the best of it." That man understood something profound. He understood that his attitude was the one thing he still controlled. He could not control what had happened to him, but he could control what it meant. He could control how he responded. He could control who he would become in the face of this tragedy. And he chose to become someone admirable, someone strong, someone who inspired others. His attitude, that little thing, made an enormous difference in his life and in the lives of everyone who met him. Now I can hear some of you saying that this is all very well for extraordinary circumstances. But what about ordinary life? What about the daily grind, the small frustrations, the accumulation of minor disappointments? Does attitude really matter for those things? In fact, it matters even more because extraordinary circumstances demand our attention. They force us to make conscious choices. But ordinary life lulls us into patterns. It allows us to develop habits of thought that may not serve us well. Consider your attitude toward your work. Do you see it as a burden to be endured or as an opportunity to contribute? Your attitude affects your performance, your relationships, and most importantly, your happiness. Consider your attitude toward aging. You can view getting older as a process of decay and loss, or you can view it as gaining experience and wisdom. You can focus on what you can no longer do, or you can appreciate what you have learned. Same process, same biological reality, but one attitude makes aging a tragedy, while the other makes it a triumph. Consider your attitude toward other people. You can choose to see people as generally selfish and untrustworthy, or you can choose to see them as generally well-meaning but flawed. Your attitude will not change who they actually are, but it will change how you interact with them, and that will change how they interact with you. If you approach people with suspicion and hostility, you will generally find suspicion and hostility reflected back at you. If you approach people with openness and goodwill, you will generally find the same in return. Your attitude shapes your reality. I want to be clear about something. Having a good attitude does not mean ignoring problems. It does not mean pretending difficulties do not exist. It does not mean being naive about danger or dishonest about facts. That would be foolish. A good attitude is not the same as blind optimism. A good attitude means facing reality squarely, while choosing to focus on what you can do, rather than what you cannot do. It means acknowledging problems, while believing they can be solved. It means accepting difficulties, while refusing to be defeated by them. It means seeing clearly, while choosing hope over despair. During the war, I never pretended we were not in danger. I never minimized the threat we face. I was brutally honest about how difficult things were. But I combined that honesty with an attitude of absolute determination, and I acknowledged the problems while insisting we would overcome them. That is the balance. That is the attitude that works. You must be realistic about challenges and optimistic about your ability to meet them. Now let me address the question of how you develop a good attitude, because attitude is not something you are born with. It is something you cultivate. It is something you practice. It is something you choose, day after day, moment by moment. The first step is awareness. You must become conscious of your current attitude. Notice what you focus on. Many people are completely unaware of their own attitude. Once you become aware of this pattern, you can change it. The second step is to question your interpretation. When something happens, you immediately assign meaning to it. But that meaning is not objective fact. It is interpretation. And you can choose a different interpretation. If someone criticizes your work, you can interpret that as evidence that you are incompetent. Or you can interpret it as useful feedback that will help you improve. Both interpretations are possible. Both are consistent with the facts. But one attitude empowers you and one disempowers you. Choose the interpretation that serves you. The third step is to practice gratitude. Gratitude is simply the practice of noticing what is going well. And there is always something going well, even in the darkest times. During the war, I was grateful for our brave pilots. I was grateful for the resolve of the British people. Gratitude balances your perspective. The fourth step is to surround yourself with people who have good attitudes. Attitude is contagious. As I said earlier, if you spend your time with complainers and pessimists, you will become a complainer and pessimist. If you spend your time with people who face challenges with courage and creativity, you will develop those qualities yourself. Choose your companions wisely. They will shape your attitude more than you realize. The fifth step is to take action. Attitude and action reinforce each other. Even if you do not feel particularly positive, act as if you do. The action itself will begin to shift your attitude. I have used this technique many times. There were days during the war when I felt discouraged. But I never let that show. I acted with confidence. My external attitude shaped my internal attitude. You can do the same. Now some of you may be thinking that all of this talk about attitude is a luxury. You may believe that your circumstances are so difficult that attitude is irrelevant. I understand that thinking, but it is wrong. In fact, attitude matters most when circumstances are hardest. When things are easy, attitude hardly matters at all. But when things are difficult, that is when attitude becomes everything. I have seen this proven again and again. The people who survive and thrive in the face of terrible circumstances are the ones with the best attitudes. They are the ones who refuse to give up. They are the ones who maintain hope in darkness. Your attitude is not a magic wand that will make all your problems disappear. It is not a guarantee of success. It is not a shield against misfortune, but it is a tool, a powerful tool, perhaps the most powerful tool you have. It will not determine everything that happens to you, but it will largely determine what you make of what happens to you, and that is what matters most. Two people can experience the same events and end up in completely different places simply because of the attitude they brought to those events. One person turns adversity into growth. Another person turns adversity into bitterness. Same adversity, different attitude, different life. So I ask you today to examine your attitude. I ask you to become conscious of the story you are telling yourself about your life. I ask you to question whether that story is serving you well. I ask you to consider whether you might choose a different attitude, one that opens possibilities rather than closing them, one that empowers you rather than victimizes you, one that leads to action rather than paralysis. This is not about being dishonest. This is not about denying reality. This is about choosing where to focus, what to emphasize, how to interpret the facts of your life. The facts do not speak for themselves. You give them meaning. You decide what they mean. And that decision, that attitude will shape everything that follows. Attitude is a little thing. It weighs nothing. It costs nothing. It requires no special talent or privilege. Anyone can change their attitude at any moment. It is entirely within your control. But it makes a big difference. Perhaps the biggest difference there is. Choose wisely. Choose an attitude of courage rather than fear. Choose an attitude of possibility rather than limitation. Choose an attitude of gratitude rather than resentment. Choose an attitude of action rather than passivity. Choose an attitude that serves the person you want to become and the life you want to live. That choice is yours. That power is yours. Use it well. Thank you.